bags where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe. I'm your regular Wednesday evening host here at Body Bags. It is week 547. It is random. And the next two are random. And I kind of felt inspired. I won't really go into why. But I felt really inspired, not just this week, next week, to pull off a couple films off my shelf that I picked up on the cheap years ago, a few years ago. Went up to a place near Chattanooga, Tennessee, and was checking it out on the advice of a friend. And lo and behold, I came across these two titles. You see the one up there, and it's a sequel. Just came across them on the shelf, side by side together, really super cheap. And I had just seen these movies, I think, advertised on the back of a Bangori or Rue Morgue or something. And so it's Bruno freaking Mattei. Of course, I'm grabbing these two. And I felt at the moment, like I just hit a minor jackpot. And then they sat on my shelf for a few years. I just heard so much trash, so much, just people just tearing them, worst movies ever, and, his worst movies ever, and and sort of, you hear that, and sometimes you fall to temptation, and you just sort of, I'll just leave them on my shelf. That was a big mistake. I watched this the other day. I've seen it a few times now in getting ready for this review. Bruno Mattei. I don't know if it was quite planned like this, but ultimately ends up being his farewell. He shot this and its direct sequel, Zombies at the Beginning, back-to-back in the Philippines. Got sick really bad. Didn't even see the editing process through. In fact, I'm pretty sure he didn't even get to see the final product of these films. Grew really sick, and ultimately, unfortunately, Mr. Mattei left us. And what a director. If you love Italian cinema, and he was, man, maybe the king of the cannibals, man, in terms of just cannibalizing anyone and everyone, man. It doesn't matter. In this movie, man, okay, so I said I felt inspired, so I decided I was going to roll. I'm going to finally pull them off my shelf, and I'm just going to do it, man. Well, I was reading a review by Brett Gallman. It is in IMDb down there in the critics review or whatever. I always read his stuff, and he started to turn my head completely around in terms of my anticipation, my level of anticipation in terms of what I was about to get by diving into this. Let me just say this. You ought to never, ever, ever not see something just because of the amount of people you may have heard just diss on it completely and absolutely. Watch it for yourself. And, I know Mattei well enough. I know what I'm probably going to get into anyways. But I figure right at the end of his career, maybe these just weren't the best examples of Mattei. Look, I had an absolute blast with this. I freaking love this movie. There are a few things in here that I know that probably it was a really, really low budget that they were working with. And yet, in spite of that, so let me just, Mattei, Hell of the Living Dead, right? Entertaining as freaking crap. This movie is entertaining, and I'm expecting the next one to be as entertaining as well. So the coolest thing Mattei does, now you remember, he was uncredited on Zombie 3. Of course, gave us Hell of the Living Dead, Rats, Nights of Terror, just a huge filmography. These two films really are, in a sense, his contribution to the ongoing sort of zombie thing that began in 1979 by the maestro himself, Lucio Fulci, marketed as Zombie 2. And if you've seen Zombie 2, you ought to know that Mattei gives us in the beginning what serves really, I think, to be a really interesting prologue to why things are the way they are on, was it Matu? The island of Zombie. it just sort of sets you up. You got the conquistadors, you got the natives, you got voodoo, you've got things going bad, you've got the dead rising, and even a great homage to the early scenes in Zombie of the bodies rising, having been all wrapped up and shooting them in the head and all that. I mean, total nod that direction. But really, it's almost kind of like what he was trying to serve up was an interesting, his own idea of what or how that island got to be. Now, this movie, in a way, feels like it leaps off of Zombie 3 in a way, but it looks back at everything, man. It is pretty self-aware. So you get that prologue out of the way. You get a bunch of treasure hunters. They're off the coast of this island looking for treasure, or maybe not immediately, but they're close to this island. They're pulling up this treasure up out of the water, man. And, you know, as soon as it hits the water, the bottom of the treasure, which is really cool-looking treasure chest, bottom drops out. All of the treasure just dumps into the ocean. And so they're sort of left with nothing. And for whatever reason, they don't decide to go try to salvage anything. They just leave it. They're so disgusted with themselves that they probably screwed it up themselves by not doing the process right. So the next thing you know, man, there's this fog. You know, I think you got some miniatures at work here. You got a lot of stuff at work here, man. You kind of go Ghost Galleon a little bit. In this movie, man, you got some music from The Shining in the beginning. You know, it just sort of cannibalizes off of so many different films, the Tombs of the Blind Dead films, the zombie movies. I'm trying to make come to my mind. But just almost anything and everything that you could serve up, you know, as a I'll take this, I'll take that, I'll take this. It is like a smorgasbord. Now, being independent and low budget, money's placed in certain areas. You can tell where certain effects, are just so much fun to watch. And then others, you know, you kind of look at and laugh to yourself, you know. Well, I see the zombie gloves, you know, I see some that just have paint, you know, on their face. And then you get moments where it's not like that. In fact, there's a direct nod right to Zombie with an eye splinter scene. Never does it. It just pulls back. You almost think you're going to get the flying head from Zombie 3, but you don't. It is a head and a chest. I mean, this movie just goes everywhere, man. You got these zombies that are like vampires. You got ghosts. You've got portraits that suddenly has a portrait of someone. Then you look back and the portrait and that person's gone. You've got, I mean, it's just like anywhere and everywhere. I would say if this movie suffers the most from anything, it was shot digitally, and it just aesthetically, I don't know. I really had a hard time. I don't really like movies shot digitally. I would rather see a 35 millimeter or even, thinking 70 millimeter maybe. I'd rather see it shot on film like that, on regular film, not digitally. It just, I don't know. There's just something about it aesthetically that I have a hard time with. As you can imagine, being Italian, the what do you call it? The subtitles, the dubbing is absolutely wretched. Man, nothing syncs up at all. The editing process, you know, 1 second you're here, then you're there, then you're here, then you're here, then you're here, then there, and here, and it sounds like where am I going? But it can't help but being absolutely entertaining every step of the way. And there are some scenes that really stand out that I just thought, man, I wish you just stay here a little bit longer. The vampire queen, I guess I could call her that, the old lady. That makeup job, the just what they did was so great, so weird, so just. I mean, it's just so okay. So, anyways, you know, I'm kind of doing this the way the editing job did to me. I'm all over the place. So eventually they shipwreck up on this island. While they're sort of shipwreck, they go to look for supplies or whatever. They leave one person back on the boat. Things go bad. Zombies end up on the boat. We got a self-destruct button. It's one of those movies. It's hit, boom, And then, and you've got, lines like, you suddenly jump to the characters on the island. The captain is like, they hear the explosion, like, something must have happened with the boat. I mean, it's just, these kind of lines just all over. But then you got this really imagery, where you're in a graveyard. And it's a great nod to Night of the Living Dead. You see the zombie just sort of walking towards you. And it's such a great shot. The contacts that they use, some of them are really quite effective. Some of these zombies look really creepy. And then you got your makeup job, where you could just tell they just painted the face or did nothing with the arms, but concentrated here and there for effect. And ultimately, in the end, and you can kind of maybe see a little bit there. Ultimately, your heroine, makes it all the way to the end. Everyone else dies. Everyone else is doomed, man. No one's getting off this island. But the girl does get off, sort of. It's just, God, I just had so much fun with it. It almost felt, for 2007, I almost felt like I got catapulted backwards to an earlier day of Mattei. Like, I mean, I can't even remember them now, but I mean, look about all the movies that came out in 07. The last thing you expect in 07, I don't know, Wreck was one, I think, but there's tons of movies, man, that came out in 07. This was a pretty good year. You don't expect this. You don't expect Bruno Mattei. You don't expect this movie or its direct sequel. I don't know, so far late in the game. I was watching an interview with I think it was the writer, the screenplay writer, who I think wrote Cat in the Brain for Fulci. He made the point that originally they were going to shoot in Argentina, it just didn't work out, so they fell back on the go-to, which is always the Philippines, right? Earlier contacts from earlier years, right? But he said, Mattei's death took everyone by surprise. And as that would, right? And but he, and now this has been out for a while, it's been out for a while. He said his hope was that they could somehow get Claudio Fragasso to finish off the trilogy, because it was supposed to be a trilogy, and finish it off. Now we haven't seen anything or heard anything, so I don't know where all that stuff is, but it's just a fun movie, man, and it serves up to take away, like I said, from anything or everything, but serves it up in a very Mattei way, very entertaining, and very. It's hard to get bored, really. I mean, there may be maybe a moment or two where you kind of like pause for a second. Okay, where are we going with this? But things generally just keep in that high gear of just entertaining. It's just entertaining. I'm trying to think of anything like really specific. Some of the imagery, you've got the I can't remember what you call them. There's so many different types of zombies. You've got regeneration. You've got one zombie loses his arm and a new arm comes out, which is pretty cool. The whole vampire-like thing is pretty cool. You got a lot of conquistadors. You got a ghost, the captain of the conquistadors. Him and the captain of our ship has a nice, little, interesting conversation around the table. You have a lot of backdrop, stock footage, stock music. There's just so much crammed into this movie, and I think my bottom line is, I was not expecting this. I don't know what I was expecting, but I can't believe I waited so long, and now I really cannot wait till I see the direct sequel. I think. I'm so glad. Now, this is out of print. The second one's out of print. You can't get them anymore unless you want to pay way out of your pocket. I'm not saying that's worth it at all, man. I lucked out. I was at the right place at the right time. I saw them both up on the shelf together. I grabbed both, and I'm so glad I did, even though it's been years since they've just sat on my shelf. I'm glad I finally got them off, and well worth. I think it's well worth the wait. If you know Italian cinema, you know what I mean. I mean, you're not going to be, you can't expect to get, well, you're not getting Lucio Fulci zombie, that's for sure. But you're getting something more akin, something that feels like it maybe fits somewhere between, around Zombie 3, Zombie 4, maybe. Sort of, even though I would say, you know, the production and energy in both those movies, yeah, a little bit more. But of course, you know, you're back in the 90s, right? This is 2007. So for them to actually pull this off, I think you know, in a minor way, is pretty remarkable. And it really, you know, if you love Italian cinema and you love its imperfections, its flaws, and then, but you haven't seen these movies, I highly suggest, if you can get your hands on them, or, you know, without having to spend, you know, arm and leg. You don't want to do that, because then if you feel like you've wasted an hour and a half of your life, you know, I don't want you to feel like that either. But it's and I don't know if I really call it an acquired taste, but I guess if you really love Italian cinema, that is kind of an acquired taste. I mean, and I do. I mean, ever since I was a kid, man. And, you know, this is not your Fulci Dario level stuff here. I mean, this is Bruno Mattei, you know, kind of stuff. But it was, you know, there's a lot of energy in there. There's a lot of fun. Well, the main actors and actresses, you could tell they really struggled with the environment, the heat, and everything. These things are pretty evident. So, anyways, yeah, Island of the Living Dead, '07, Bruno Mattei. Yeah, I really suggest taking a look if you can, without having to sell your house. I don't think you want to do that. But do check it out if you've never seen it. It was quite entertaining. And some moments that really stuck with me, and I just got a kick out of certain moments where you just like look at it and you just like, oh, that's good. I like that. Bruno never gets old. All right, so anyways, next week, Zombies, the beginning. And that promises to have an actually better interview on there with the screenwriter, I think. So I'm looking forward to checking that out as well. And maybe wrap up thoughts on both together in an interesting way. So anyways, as always, we end these things off with, go freaking Bills!
This is not a dream. Not a dream.
We might be useful to